Okay, now when it comes time to look at the engine, there's a few things there that I want you to know. First off, the IO550D and the IO470F, both the engines, are totally stock engines, unmodified. So with the IO550, anything in the parts service manual applies to this motor. The baffling, the exhaust system, and the engine shock mounts are all stock 182. So if you need to replace those, stock 182 parts will do fine. Once the cowling's off, when I get to the engine, first thing I look at is the induction adapter in the bottom cowl. That's the zinc chromated part you see there. And in the bottom of that is a spring-loaded alternate air door. This is the system off the latest 185 Skywagon. Works really well, but I like to inspect it, especially if there's been an engine fire or something. So just take a good look at that. You can look up in through the induction hole there and take a look at the alternate air door, check the springs, and once that's done, you're good to go. One of the things that I've kind of started doing is I look at the boost pumps pretty close. There's a 10-year overhaul, recommended overhaul time of the boost pump, not mandatory, but we had one fail 11 years, and out of 1,000 airplanes, that's a pretty good ratio, but I still like to kind of replace the boost pump about every 10 years or so. So the boost pump's down there, like to replace it. Next thing is mufflers. Stock 182 muffler, but for those engines running lean a peak, we're seeing mufflers getting chewed up in about 300 or 400 hours. And what happens is the interior baffles, the flame cones start coming apart. So if you're running a lot lean a peak, I want you to really inspect up that tailpipe a lot and make sure those flame cones are intact. Rich a peak doesn't seem to be, for some reason, quite as bad. So there's that. The only other issue we've really had with the engine is the starter adapter. All three of our aircraft, 2 Katmais and 1 Kenai, have all had the starter adapters replaced. And Continental went to a newer style starter adapter where you do not want to move the prop backwards because that messes it up. In our case, in each one that we replaced, we went with the old classic style where you can back it up, it travels freely both directions. But the starter adapter has been kind of an issue. You do not want to move the propeller backwards. Everything else is really pretty much stock. The control cables are probably one other thing I get a question on, the throttle and mixture control cables. These are just standard 3-foot long cables, 36-inch cables. You can get them from Aircraft Spruce or anywhere else. But when you replace them, you'll see a slight reflex on the end of the throttle cable. It's not in the threaded part, it's just right above it. And what happens is that little bit of reflex, which isn't required, but that little bit of reflex that's in there spaces that control rod out just a little bit further from the induction elbow. So if you replace that, I'd recommend putting that little bit of reflex in that control. As far as the mixture goes, 36-inch seems to be just a tad bit too long, like about 3/8 of an inch maybe. So with the control cable, you can use a standard cable, but it makes it so your mixture control, sticks out from the instrument panel about 1/2 inch, which I don't like. So consequently, with the mixture cable, what I'll do is I'll tap about another 3/8 of threads on there, and I'll cut about 1/4, 3/8 of an inch off the length, and that allows the control to go all the way to the panel, which I kind of like. There's a little cushion there, which you want, but it's not out a long way. Other than that, timing, alternators, all stock 182, alternator belts, stock 182. There's really no difference in anything there. So the engine should be a pretty straightforward check in terms of what we do and what you'll need to do for your owners and your customers. Take care.